So, welcome to the last lecture of this module, module number 5. In the previous lecture, we were discussing about scheduling methods of to overcome the hazards and popularly data hazards. And these data hazards, how they arise, what were data hazards? There were three types of data hazards that we were discussing about the lectures. And there were three types of data hazards. One was read after write, then write after read, and then write after write. So, in the last lecture, in the previous lecture, we saw that there can be two methods of scheduling. Scheduling can be done in two ways. One is static scheduling, other one is dynamic scheduling. So static scheduling was the one which was being performed by the compiler itself. The compiler do not perform the static scheduling while the commencement of the program. It is not being done dynamically while the execution of the program is going. The compiler does that process before it is before the execution of the final instructions. So when it sorts out all the permutations and combinations, then all the executions are executions are done. All the instructions are executed simultaneously in the pipeline, and that is the part of superscalar architecture that we were discussing in the previous lecture. So we saw that there were two methods of static scheduling actually. One was the method that was operand forwarding, which was used to rectify raw, that is read after write hazard. And we saw that there was no other method to discuss, no other method to address this dependency. It is the data dependence, and it is also known as true dependence. It is also true dependence. Then we saw an example, as we can see that. Then we saw an example that we have done register renaming in this case and discussed about register renaming. That was the part of a static scheduling. Why this is static? Because this was being done by the compiler itself. In this, and it addressed the two dependencies, the var and var, just by changing the name of the register. And by changing the name of the register, we overcame these two dependencies or data hazards, and hence this was known as the false dependence. So let us switch over to the other method, the method of dynamic scheduling. Dynamic scheduling is considered as more efficient as compared to the static scheduling, and this process that we are going to discuss now. It will be known as referred as the Thomas-Ulos algorithm. One more thing to elaborate or specify that the courtesy of this lecture or these slides goes to Professor V. Kamakoti in reference to him. In reference to his lectures of dynamic scheduling, the Professor V. Kamakoti from IIT Madras. So let us start with this dynamic scheduling. In case of dynamic scheduling or Thomas-Ulos algorithm, in connection with the previous lecture that we have seen, we have an instruction fetch unit. Then instruction fetch unit is the fetching of the instruction. In case of superscalar architecture, we are fetching multiple instructions simultaneously to operate. But in this case, register status indicator, register status indicator is the part which indicates the status of an register set. Now, the status of this register set, suppose, for example, we consider these two instructions. In these two instructions, we are having R1 as the register set. So R2 and R3 are the independent registers from which the value has to be taken, and R1 is the dependent register in which it has to be written. So next instruction depends upon the value of R1 to be taken from the first instruction, and hence in this case this register indicator will indicate whether the value of the R1 has been updated or not. So if it is waiting for the updation, so that particular instruction would have been waiting in this reservation status. So this is the kind of reservation status. Suppose the execution unit is the boarding of the train, and this is the bunch of people that are waiting in the reservation center. So you are present, you are sitting over here, and you are waiting for a friend to come. When that friend arrives, he has a connecting bus from somewhere, say execution unit 3, and and the connecting bus from execution unit 3, when he arrives on this execution unit 1 on this bus, when he arrives on this bus, when he completes his journey and arrives on this bus, and will connect to you in your reservation room, in your reservation waiting room. And then you both will board the train together. As you cannot board the train without him because you have common connectivity and common ticket for the same seat. Suppose you have common ticket for the same seat, and you both can board the train simultaneously. You cannot board the train without each other. So this is this common kind of phenomenon that an instruction for which the value of the register has to be updated will be waiting in this will be waiting for some value or some register to update the value. So that part will be handled by this reservation station. And then we have an execution unit. The execution unit, when the value is updated, this instruction will be transferred to this execution unit, and the execution of the instruction will take. And when the execution is completed, this unit or this data will be placed on this common data bus. The common data bus, which is connected to the file register set on memory. As we can see that there are multiple execution units. So this is the part represented. We can see that it is a superscalar architecture. Multiple units are connected in this part. There can be multiple units to be accessed in pipeline. One feature of this hardware, this feature has been implemented in the hardware. This is the hardware structure. This is not being done by the compiler. So in this case, the compiler just compiles the instruction and sends it, and the rest, the scheduling process is being done by being handled by the hardware. So this is the basic difference between the static scheduling and dynamic scheduling. In case of a static scheduling, compiler will handle the dependencies, whereas in case of dynamic scheduling, the hardware is so designed to handle the dependencies. So in this case, this is a common data bus. So this common data bus, data will be placed on this common data bus. Now, again, the same process takes place, that this data, which is available on the common data bus, will be sent to this register file or the memory location, but it can also be shared, a copy of this data can also be shared on this common data bus, on this data bus. So that the one which is waiting for some value to be updated for some register can fetch that data directly from this bus. It need not to go to the register file or the memory location to access the data again. So this process in this hardware will be regarded as the concept of operand forwarding that we discussed in the previous lecture. So this is kind of operand forwarding that is being done in this case by the hardware itself. So one method of dynamic scheduling or the hardware, and why this is being known as dynamic scheduling, because this is being performed while the execution of the program is under process, while the program is under execution. So, and one more thing that we will follow, while the process of scheduling is being carried out, every instruction in this process can work out of order. It is not just being done by the compiler, that the compiler is specified that add instruction will perform after the store instruction of R1 and subtract, then store, then add. So this is not the basic, this is the instruction set that has been performed, that has been implemented by the compiler. But in order to implement a superscalar architecture and pipelining and to increase the execution unit, we need to perform the other instructions simultaneously. And if we need to perform the other instructions simultaneously, those instructions will be installed which has dependencies on the previous instruction, and only those instructions will be installed which has actually raw hazard, read after write hazard, because this dependency, true dependency, cannot be addressed, whereas other two dependencies can be addressed, as we have seen. So in case of dynamic scheduling, let us just switch over to the next slide to see. Let us try to understand this whole process, how it is being done. This hardware is that much intelligent to perform register operand forwarding as well as register renaming by itself alone. So how this is being done, that we have to see in this case. So let me tell you something. The operand forwarding and registration union depends on hardware work well for the RISC architecture. So this is basically being more applicable in case of more favorable in RISC architecture. All right. So instructions are fetched one by one and decoded to find the type of operation and the source of operand multiple decoding units. So register status indicator indicates whether the latest value of the register is in the register file or currently being computed by some execution unit. So this indicates the status whether a particular value, latest value of the register is in the register file or in the execution unit. And later it stores the execution unit number. If all the operands available, then the operation proceeds in the allotted execution unit. If all the operands means the operation for which a particular instruction has to be performed, if all the operands are available, then operation proceeds in the allotted execution unit. It waits in the reservation station of the allotted execution unit, pinging the CDB. So every execution unit writes the result along with the unit number onto the CDB, which is forwarded to all the reservation status register file and the memory to which it is addressed. So let us refer to the example that we have seen previously. No, that we are going to discuss in today's lecture. So suppose we have an example. This is an instruction set, or this a program has to be analyzed. How the superscalar architecture or how pipelining is done in this case. So suppose we have a register status indicator. The 0 indicates that the value of the register is in the register. Updated value of the register is in the register itself. Suppose these are the execution units. These are the execution units which are showing this is instruction fetch, and these are the execution units. So register status 0 means we have updated value of that particular register in the register itself. All right, it is not under execution or process. It is not under execution. So and these all are empty. Right now we are going to start the instruction fetch. We haven't done it. And let me tell you one more thing, that all the instruction that we are fetching will be valid for single cycle only. We are just talking about single cycle right now. All right. So this will be done in the same cycle, same machine cycle. So let us see. If I fetch the first instruction in the first cycle, and in the cycle, this all is being, again I'm repeating, this all is being done in the same cycle. If we fetch the first instruction, suppose this instruction was add instruction. Now add instruction has to be performed by R2 and R3. All right. So as we can see that R2 is independent of any other register, so it has its own value. R3 has its own value. It do not have any kind of dependencies. So R2 and R3, its values are not being updated. So we can take those values. These are regarded as 0. So if we add these two, the value of R1 has to be updated, and this instruction is being executed in the execution unit number 1. So we in the first execution unit, this instruction is being updated. So value of R1 is being updated. In this case, we have fetched the R1 instruction, first instruction, and R1 is being R2 and R3 being added to update the R1. So first instruction. And as we know that a pipelining has what a pipelining is, but pipelining follows a 5-step procedure. First, it fetches the instruction, then it will fetch, and then it will decode, then data fetch, then execute, and then store. So in this case, we can see that if we switch over to the next slide, suppose this was the first instruction and we were waiting for the value of the R1. Now, first instruction and second instruction, between first and second instruction, the R1 has dependency. The second instruction has dependency upon R1 for the value to be updated and to write to this place. So it depends upon R1. It has data dependencies, and this refers to raw, read after write hazard. So in this case, we must switch over to the next let us see, let us take other instruction. Now the second instruction is loaded into the fetch instruction because first is under execution. So we have updated the value of the register set. Now the first instruction, it is under execution. In the execution unit 1, this represents this value of R1 is being calculated in the execution unit 1. While the store has to wait for R1. Now the store value, this instruction cannot be executed until and unless the value of R1 is updated by this instruction. All right. So we have to wait for this. This instruction has to wait for the first value of R1 to be updated. So in this case, we will update this structure of or status of the instructions. As we can see, the I1 is execution under execution in the execution unit 1. This R1 register represents this value of R1 is under execution or under updation in this time. So at this time, the second instruction cannot be executed simultaneously as it has to wait for the first instruction to update the value of R1. So in order to update the value of R1, this I2 W1 will have to wait for the value of R1. So instruction 2 is waiting for the first unit to update the value. Let us take the third instruction. So in the case of third instruction, when we fetch this instruction, now this value of R1 again is being written. It has to be written by using the value of R5 and R6. Now R5 and R6 has to be added, but R5 and R6 are independent registers right now. So they can be executed in parallel. They do not have to wait for the first process to be executed. So it has no relation with the I1 or E. It is independent. It is just taking the values from R5 and R6, which are independent, and it can update the value of R1. So with the first instruction in sequence, we can execute third instruction. And this third instruction, the value will be updated as such here in this case. Now there is one, how register renaming is being done in this case. See, the second instruction is waiting for the first instruction to get the value updated. Whereas while you are executing the third instruction, this R1 will update its value to the registers as execution unit number 3. But the process has not been completed in the execution unit 1. It is still under process. And it is still under process because, and I2 is stalled because of this execution unit 1. But when the execution unit 3 is executing simultaneously, this all, I'm again repeating, this all is being done in the same cycle. This is a super-scalar architecture. So execution unit 3 starts executing, and if it starts executing, it will update. Suppose it writes before R1. That is the process. Now the register R1 will have the status of execution unit 3 instead of having the status of execution unit 1. It will have the status of execution unit 3 because R1, the new value of R1 is being calculated in execution unit 3. That is the part of instruction number 3. So are you getting my point? So actually we have done, hypothetically, we have done register renaming in this case. R1 is being calculated in execution unit 1, and again R1 is being calculated in execution unit 3. But for the R1 being calculated in execution unit 1, the second instruction is waiting. But the third instruction need not to wait for the execution unit 1 or 2 to complete because it is a 2. So it can be executed simultaneously when the instruction I1 is being executed. Let us load the fourth instruction in the sequence. Now, the fourth instruction in the sequence is dependent. And this sequence is dependent upon the third instruction. The value of R1, this subtraction operation, this instruction needs the value of R1 to perform this instruction, to operate this instruction. So Now the value of R1 is dependent upon 3. This part, this execution unit, the R1 is being calculated in execution unit number 3, and still this R1 is being calculated on which the second instruction depends is being calculated in execution unit number 1. So say at the same time when you are executing your instruction number 3, I4 instruction 4 will have to wait for the instruction 3 to complete, and hence the value of R7 will be updated, and hence the value of R7 will be updated to register number or execution unit number 4. And it specifies that in execution unit number 4, R7 is being calculated. The value of R7 is being calculated in execution unit number 4. So execution unit number, so instruction number 4 is dependent upon instruction number 3 for the execution, and hence it is waiting for the 3. Instruction number 2 is waiting for instruction 1, and 1 and 3 can be executed simultaneously as they both have to write. But 2 and 4 are dependent on the values of 1 and 3 respectively. So they had to wait. So let us load this next instruction, or let us fetch the next instruction, that is instruction number 5, that store R1. Now this is a write operation, and again it needs the value of R1. So it needs the value of R1, but which value? The one which is being updated or being calculated in execution unit 3, not in the execution unit 1. So this is the process that we are seeing how smartly this is being handled, or the hardware is performing the operation of register. This is actually nothing but register, and all this is being done by the hardware itself, and this is being done while the program is in execution. And that's why this kind of scheduling is known as dynamic scheduling. Every instruction in this program is performing out of order. This can be performed out of order. So now 4 and 5 are dependent upon the instruction number 3 to update its value. All right. Let us see what happens if the last instruction is executed. Now what is it that we see in this program? When this instruction can be performed in concurrence with the first instruction, with the third instruction, with the sixth instruction. They all can be performed in concurrence. Why they can be performed in concurrence? Because they do not have dependencies on the previous instruction to execute. They are just updating the value from some independent register set. So in this case, instruction 1, instruction 3, as this is superscalar architecture, 1, 2, and 6 can be executed simultaneously. But whereas the 2 has to depend upon this first, 4 and 5 has to depend upon 3. Now, until this instruction is being executed, this 6th instruction is being executed or being fetched into the pipeline, this first instruction would have updated its value. This would have completed because it's far away. The first instruction executed and the 6th instruction, almost we have executed around 5 machine cycles in this part. So this add operation or any operation, suppose this for this instance in this example we take the process that it's taking just 3 machine cycles to complete this process. So if it is taking 3 machine cycles to complete this process, this will be completed till we fetch instruction number 6 in the pipeline. So this value of R1 is updated. So right after write hazard will be processed or addressed in this case. In this case, we have to use a sequence. So this is just an example that we needed to discuss for the dynamic scheduling, and this is an attempt to explain how dynamic scheduling is being done by the hardware itself, and we can see that how smartly the hardware is handling this process, which was previously being handled by or done by the compiler itself. Compiler compiles which instruction has to perform. We saw how loop unrolling is being done, and how we reschedule the various loops in the loop scheduling. We also saw that how control hazards were being handled by branch prediction, and today we saw that how to handle data hazards. It is namely raw, WAV, and WAR. So when it is being done by the compiler, it is static, and this is what we call them as Dumas-Solo's algorithm procedure. How smartly the hardware handles operand renaming and operand forwarding and register renaming. So I think this is all for this lecture. There is also one more thing, as these instructions are being executed out of order. They are executing out of order. 3, 1, 3, and 6 can execute simultaneously, whereas 2, 4, and 5 are waiting for the updation of the value. So one more thing is needed in this hardware, and that hardware is that part is a reorder buffer. We also need, we have a reorder buffer. And what it does, as the instructions are being executed out of order, so the job of this reorder buffer will be to store those instruction sets in the order that has been compiled by the compiler, and then it flushes it out. This is just a simple, we can say, it's just a small memory which stores, which has the job to execute, because we have 4 execution units, and every execution unit is taking its own machine cycle to complete the process, and then the data is being fetched and being written to the memory and being available on this common data bus. So as every instruction has a different execution time, so some instruction, maybe instruction number 5 was completed before instruction number 1, or some other instruction. So the job of this buffer is to store the instructions in the sequence that has been defined by the compiler. And when this process of the program execution is done completely, this reorder buffer is flushed out. Clear. So this completes module number 5. We have almost touched all the topics well and good, and you can have a track of these topics in the video lectures that we have discussed. If you have any queries, we can raise your queries in Google Classroom. I will try to address them in no time. This completes module number 5. In the next lectures, now we are left with 3 lectures only as per the schedule. And in the next 3 lectures, we will discuss module number 6, the last module of this course. And, thank you very much.